How many children Israel's killed in the process?
There is a very simple explanation for the reason that we do not know. Because
you only count the terrorists who killed, not the children?
Hear the explanation?
Well, I just ask you, just to be clear, are you saying that the IDF only counts the bodies of terrorists it kills, not innocent children?
Well, the IDF has not been, and this is a shift now, as you will have heard from Jonathan Conricus, has not been in control of any significant part of Gaza to be able to conduct that analysis.
So how does it know how many terrorists it's killing?
Because it is striking them with clear intelligence and targeting those strikes deliberately.
So it counts the bodies of the terrorists, but not the children it kills in the process.
It counts.
If you want to understand how official propaganda falls apart under basic cross-examination, you don't need a complex debate. You just need two simple questions. How many children have you killed? And why won't you let foreign journalists in to verify your claims? On Piers Morgan Uncensored, legal advocate Natasha Hausdorff attempted to defend the Israeli military's conduct in Gaza. But within minutes, she walked straight into a trap of her own making. She claimed with total confidence that the IDF maintains an unprecedentedly low combatant-to-civilian casualty ratio. But when pressed on how many innocent children have died to achieve that ratio, her entire defense collapsed. She admitted Israel doesn't actually count civilian deaths at all. I'm Neil. This is the honest perspective. Truth over access, people over profits, and receipts over narrative. Let's get into it.
When I interviewed the UK ambassador to the UK,
yes,
she was able to tell me definitively that 30,000 Hamas terrorists had been killed.
I think it was an estimate, let's be clear.
But she had absolutely no idea, estimate or otherwise, how many children had been killed in the process. Do you know?
There's a very simple logical explanation for that, which is Israel is targeting Hamas and Palestine.
Do you know how many children Israel's killed in the process?
There is a very simple explanation for the reason that we do not know. Because
you only count the terrorists who killed, not the children?
Hear the explanation?
Well, I just ask you, just to be clear, are you saying that the IDF only counts the bodies of terrorists it kills, not innocent children?
Well, the IDF has not been, and this is a shift now, as you will have heard from Jonathan Conricus, has not been in control of any significant part of Gaza to be able to conduct that analysis.
So how does it know how many terrorists it's killing?
Because it is striking them with clear intelligence and targeting those strikes deliberately.
So it counts the bodies of the terrorists, but not the children it kills in the process.
It counts. I'm sorry, this is perfectly logical.
It's actually not logical at all.
It counts.
To anyone watching this, they're thinking, what on earth are these Israelis saying? First the ambassador, now you. What you're saying is that you only count the terrorists that are killed. You don't count the children that are killed in the process of killing the terrorists.
Perhaps
to which it begs the question,
no, I can provide you with some additional analysis.
Why?
If you'll allow me to answer the question, I'll provide you with some additional analysis, which is in relation to the casualty ratios that have been projected.
How do you know the ratios?
I'll explain. The casualty ratio throughout the first period of the war, phase 1, was generally put at between 1 to 1 and 1.5 to 1. I'll explain. Since then, in phase 2, because of a very different type of fighting that we're now seeing, there are some estimates that it may have gone up to 2 to 1.
How do you know?
Very simply, that Israel has been able to establish...
How do you know if you're not counting?
May I answer the question?
Well, you're not counting the civilians you're killing, so how do you know the ratio?
Well, if you're not going to allow me to
answer the question... You talk about logic. Let me go to... I want to bring Dave... I don't know.
You've just asked me the question.
I've let you speak for a long time. Dave is...
You haven't, Piers.
Well, I have, and I'll let you speak again. We've got plenty of time here.
I'm sorry.
Notice what just happened here. Natasha Hausdorff claims that Israel cannot possibly count the number of children killed in Gaza because the IDF isn't in physical control of the entire territory. Okay, fine. But then, in the very next breath, she claims to know the exact ratio of terrorists to civilians killed, quoting 1:1 or 1.51. Think about the basic math. A ratio is a fraction. You cannot calculate a ratio without knowing both the numerator and the denominator. You cannot claim to know the exact ratio of civilian deaths if you explicitly refuse to count the civilian deaths. It is a mathematical impossibility presented as an authoritative legal defense.
Sorry,
I'm sorry, but it's my show. I'm going to go to Dave. Dave, I'm told I'm lacking logic here. Is there anything logical about what we're hearing about how they apparently know the exact ratio of terrorists they're killing to civilians, but they don't know how many civilians they're killing? How do you know the ratio?
Piers, it's just too ridiculous. And as you know, Piers, and look, I know that you've been, I think, very, as you said before, I don't want to put you on either side of this debate, because I think actually people who are hardcore on either side of this debate probably see you as someone on the other side.
Yeah, they all hate me. The extremists all hate me. That's fine.
No, not all. I didn't mean to say they all hate you. A lot of us like you.
They actually do. The ones who are to the extremities on both sides, they all hate me. So that's fine. Tax day has passed, but for millions of Americans, that's where the trouble begins. The IRS is now ramping up enforcement for those who missed the April deadline or still owe back taxes. Well, today's sponsor, Tax Network USA, can still help. If your books are a mess, if you're self-employed, or if you're a business owner, Tax Network USA specializes in cleaning up financial chaos and getting you back on track quickly. They say the IRS is applying enforcement pressure at levels they've never seen before. But even after the deadline, it's not too late to take control. The consultation is completely free. Acting now could stop penalties, threatening letters, and surprise levies before they escalate. Call 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/peers. That's tnusa.com/peers. Let Tax Network USA make the next move, not the IRS.
But I think one of the things that any honest observer has noticed since the very beginning of this conflict is that the Israelis, including the highest levels of the Israeli government, they just speak out of both sides of their mouth the whole time. And so it's like, which argument are we even taking on? I mean, they'll sit here and say from the very beginning that the goal is just to get the hostages back and to defeat Hamas, while their finance minister is openly talking about how the goal is to cleanse the entire strip.
He's not even hiding it. He says it.
Yes.
He literally says it in front of the world.
Yes. And we see them now putting this into plans into action to do this. So how are we to judge this? They'll sit here and say that they've taken painstaking efforts to make sure that they limit the number of civilians that are killed, while also saying they have no idea how many civilians are being killed, and they don't count the number because that's not who they're targeting. You'll sit here and say we're only targeting Hamas, or that we're only intentionally targeting Hamas, and at the same time think about the argument they're even making as Smotrich is out bragging about how not one grain of wheat will get into Gaza for this 3-month period that you're referring to. But they'll say, hey, look, they have stockpiles of aid that had gone in there previously. It's like, okay, Piers, so then logically, can't we deduce you're not starving Hamas? They've got plenty of food. Then who is the additional blockade supposed to impact? It's the civilian population. And so, listen, I'm sorry, this is just anybody with just common sense and a basic understanding of logic could tell you that none of these defenses make any sense. And instead, I think it's reasonable for us to say that we're going to judge the Israeli government, and I like that you were precise about that. We're talking about the government of a foreign country, not people who believe in Judaism across the world, and not even necessarily the people of that country. But when I'm judging the Israeli government, I'm sorry, I'm going to judge them based off what their actions are, and I'm going to judge them based off what their motives are when they admit the truth.
Yeah.
And so you could sit here and say, oh, we're doing everything we can to prevent the number of children dying, and then brag about the ratio, but at the same time tell me you don't even know the number of children who are dying. The bottom line here, and this is why global opinion is turning against Israel, is the level of human suffering that is being inflicted by Israel on the people of Gaza is evil. It is pure freaking evil, and it doesn't need to be done this way. And if you think you can get away with this with a decentralized media and with smartphones and with 4K high def images and with the ability through social media today for people to communicate in a non-controlled environment, good freaking luck, man. This is going to end up so bad for everyone.
Dave Smith hits the nail directly on the head. This isn't just a slip of the tongue. It's a systematic pattern of speaking out of both sides of their mouth. When they want to brag about surgical precision to Western audiences, they quote clean ratios. When they are confronted with the horrifying body count of children, they suddenly claim ignorance and say counting civilians isn't their job. You cannot have it both ways.
The Israeli government refuses to allow international journalists to get in there and do their job and verify whether any of these things are actually
So
happening
I have been
when
there.
you say they didn't happen?
I can help you with why. I've been there in September and seen a great deal of the Hamas terror infrastructure with my own eyes, including the fact that when we were in Rafah, every second building was being used
Did you see any dead
by
children?
Hamas. No, and this is the important factor.
Why do you think that?
Our movements...
Is that because there aren't any,
No.
or because you were being given a sanitised little tour,
No, we were
which
being...
didn't involve seeing the bodies of dead children?
We were very restricted because of the nature of the battlefield in
What
in
right does the
Gaza.
IDF have to restrict journalists doing their job? In every
well, on
other
the
war I've
basis-
ever been involved in, including sending my Daily Mirror journalists to cover the Iraq war in Baghdad, where they rang me at midnight to ask if they should leave or stay in a hotel, the Baghdad Hilton, I think it was called, before shock and awe arrived. So huge responsibility on my shoulders then about the lives of my journalists, but they were prepared to risk them to report the truth to the wider world. Israel has decided no journalists from outside can go in.
For 3 reasons.
And make that assessment themselves.
Yes.
What right does Israel have to do that?
For 3 reasons. Will you allow me to finish?
Well, there are no reasons.
Well, you've
It's
just
none of
asked
your
me-
business
you've
whether
just-
the journalists view their safety as being
haven't-
at risk.
I'm sorry, you haven't heard the reasons yet. The first, of course, is the safety of the journalists, and I appreciate you don't accept that. The second...
I think it's a load of nonsense.
The second is the
The
safety...
idea you're doing is that some quaint concern for the safety of journalists is bullshit.
That was reason number one.
Utter bullshit.
Reason number two is the
These better get better.
is the ability of IDF soldiers to be able to conduct this war against Hamas without...
without the journalists getting in the way?
No, without...
They've actually, by the way, they've killed more journalists in Palestinian journalists than in any war
Hamas
in
members
modern
wearing
history.
press vests are not journalists. And reason number three...
So none of them are journalists?
And reason number three...
So just to be clear, none of the Palestinian journalists who've been killed are actually
I
journalists.
said
Is that
Hamas members.
Oh, they're all Hamas
Palestinian
members?
Islamic, those that are... And those
Every
that belong
single
to,
dead
that's not what I
Palestinian
said.
journalist
I
is a
don't-
member of Hamas. Is that your position?
No, listen, I appreciate Piers. This
That is
your
also
style.
bullshit.
But
No, I'm not going to let you bullshit.
misrepresenting every
So that's
word
2 out of
that
2.
we
What's the
know.
third reason?
Our mutual friend Douglas Murray was embedded with the IDF in Lebanon.
You said the words yourself. I love Douglas, but he was embedded with the IDF.
Right.
He's unbelievably
But in
pro-Israel.
let me finish.
So of course
Will
he
you
was
allow
going
me
to
to
write
finish?
what
No.
he witnessed while embedded with the IDF.
No, let me finish what his experiences there were. The difference
I
is
read
that in
it.
Lebanon...
You don't have to tell me.
There is something I think that you won't have heard. The IDF are able to allow journalists into Lebanon. He wasn't the only one. There were many other
There
international
have been a
journalists with him.
tiny... No.
Those other
bullshit.
international journalists with him
Bullshit.
were very clear.
There
that
have been a tiny
beg your
handful of journalists led in by the IDF in
I
tightly
appreciate-
controlled environments
And you
to
know-
witness what the IDF were prepared to let them see.
And you know what those
And actually, what it
journalists
needs this
said?
war to stop the bullshit, which is out of control, by the way, in this last 3 minutes, is to let international journalists go in and do their jobs. And they will worry with their networks or organizations about their safety, but they should be allowed to do their jobs. And there's only one reason why the Israeli government doesn't want international journalists crawling all over Gaza. It's because they do not want them reporting
Piers.
what they will find.
Reason number
which, by the
three.
way, will include the bodies of thousands of children who you, on the Israeli side, are not counting as you count the terrorists you kill, but who journalists would.
Reason number three is that those journalists that were in Lebanon said that they had to be very careful about what they reported because of what Hezbollah would do to their colleagues in Beirut.
Now we get to the core reason why these contradictory statistics exist in a vacuum. When Piers asks why foreign journalists are banned from independently verifying any of these claims, Natasha Hausdorff's first official reason is that Israel is banning them for their own safety. Consider the sheer cynicism of that line. The military that has dropped tens of thousands of tons of munitions on thousands of families in Gaza wants us to believe they are deeply concerned with the physical well-being of Western journalists? It insults the intelligence of the viewer.
The fact that international journalists have sunk to this level, that they would allow their reportage to be controlled by terrorist organizations, Iranian proxies, Hamas and Hezbollah included, is despicable. That is the real issue here that has driven
Actually,
the
it's not.
international
The real
community.
issue
Of course
is
it is. This
Israel-
is terrorist organizations'
The real-
propaganda
actually,
that
it's
you
not.
have
Let me
eaten
bring
up.
David- let me
and
bring
the fact
David.
that you will not allow me to answer a single question
You know what?
here
You've made
will
all
be
your
perfectly
points, and they
evident to your
all, I'm
viewers.
afraid,
I
Natasha,
haven't. I certainly
turned out
haven't
to be
made all my
bullshit.
points.
So let me bring in Dave. Dave, look, I don't like to keep saying the word bullshit, but when you hear a lot of bullshit, you have to call it for what it is, bullshit. And the truth is, particularly on the journalist front, there is a very simple way that all this fog of war confusion could be resolved, and then it's to let the journalists in. And there's a very simple reason why they're not. They don't want the journalists to report to the world what is actually going on. Otherwise, they'd let them in.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I understand, Natasha, that you're upset that Piers isn't letting you finish your thought, but the idea that the number one reason you gave is that what Israel just values the sanctity of life so much that they're so worried about these journalists, it's just so ridiculous.
Actually,
it doesn't pass the basic smell test. It's offensive to think that level, you talk about propaganda being spread. That is just pure propaganda. It is obvious. It is obviously the reason Israel doesn't.
Who's going to be blamed? Sorry, Natasha just said, who will be blamed for the journalist deaths? A recognition that yet more journalists would be killed, because I think it's well over 100 Palestinians who you think are all Hamas members. But you know what? It's not your job to worry about the safety of international journalists. They've all been to many, many war zones.
That's
whether it's Clarissa Ward at CNN, Jeremy Bowen at BBC. I know a lot of these people myself. You let the journalists do their job, and you do yours.
Yeah, by the way,
and the IDF can do theirs.
They don't seem to have this concern about being blamed for slaughtering the children of Gaza.
They don't admit they're killing any.
To stop that, right? Right. As every time you hear, it's either, this is propaganda. This is Hamas propaganda. Those kids weren't intentionally killed. All this stuff. But look, like we said at the beginning, it doesn't meet the basic smell test, the basic human test. If you're telling me, as you said, Natasha, that Hamas has locked up all of the aid that's gotten in there, so who are you targeting when you don't let further aid in? It's the civilian population who's not getting it. Now, you could sit here and say Israel isn't targeting them, meaning I blow up a building that I know has little children in it, but I'm claiming I'm targeting the bad guy. But you know that in effect, your action is going to, in effect, destroy the civilian population. I'm sorry, this is a distinction without a difference. And I don't care about your appeal to international law. Look, I'm Lysander Spooner on this issue of international law. I think either international law allows what Israel is doing to Gaza, or it's been powerless to stop it. So either way, it has not been effective enough. By the way, it does seem like it's the latter, not the former, seeing as how there is, criminal warrants out for Netanyahu for committing war crimes. But regardless of that, the bottom line here is that Israel is doing this to the civilian population of Gaza, and nobody who's being honest doesn't believe that the only reason Israel won't let journalists in there is because they don't want the world to see what they're doing to these people. Period. That's the reason, and everybody, including you, knows it. The problem here is that you're not allowed to tell the truth. You're Israel's lawyer, and you got to defend them no matter what. Natasha, does Israel have nuclear weapons?
Sorry, I'm an independent
Does Israel have nuclear weapons?
The English bar.
Yes or no?
That's a good question.
I'm not instructed.
Yes or no?
I'm
yes
not
or no, Natasha?
Does Israel have nuclear weapons, Natasha?
What we just witnessed across those 4 clips isn't just a bad interview performance by a guest. It's a case study in how state-level propaganda functions when it loses total control of the narrative. Let's look at the facts and independent reporting behind what was claimed on that stage. First, on the claim of casualty ratios. Natasha Hausdorff tried to dismiss the Gaza Health Ministry's numbers as fabricated Hamas propaganda. But what she conveniently omitted, and what mainstream coverage frequently fails to mention, is that historically, aid agencies, the United Nations, human rights organizations, and even Israel's own intelligence services have relied on the Gaza Health Ministry's mortality records as accurate. During previous conflicts in 2009, 2012, and 2014, the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs' own internal reports matched the Gaza Health Ministry's death counts within a margin of 1 to 3%. Independent epidemiological studies published in The Lancet have repeatedly validated the death registries during this current conflict, finding no evidence of systemic inflation. So when an advocate stands on television and says, "We don't count the dead children, but we know our ratio is 1:1, they aren't relying on classified intelligence. They are relying on the fact that most television anchors won't do the real-time math to call out the contradiction. Second, look at the claim regarding international media access. Hausdorff gave 3 reasons why foreign press isn't allowed in: journalist safety, keeping them out of the way of IDF operations, and preventing hostiles from controlling the narrative. But let's look at the actual legal and historical precedent. In every major modern conflict, from the Gulf War to the invasion of Iraq, to the war in Afghanistan, to the ongoing war in Ukraine, international journalists have operated near active front lines at their own risk. Media organizations sign liability waivers and deploy experienced war correspondents who understand the danger. Israel's refusal to permit independent foreign press into Gaza, unembedded and unescorted by IDF handlers, is completely unprecedented for a modern democracy operating a conflict of this scale. The Committee to Protect Journalists, CPJ, has documented that over 100 Palestinian journalists and media workers have been killed in Gaza since October 2023, making it the deadliest period for journalists since CPJ began gathering data in 1992. Local Palestinian reporters have carried the entire burden of documenting this war on the ground, while being systematically accused by advocates like Hausdorff of being Hamas operatives wearing press vests the moment their reporting shows civilian carnage. And why is that? Because if you eliminate local reporters by branding them all hostiles, and you block foreign reporters under the guise of protecting their safety, you create an absolute information vacuum. And in an information vacuum, the state can claim whatever numbers it wants. It can claim 1-1 ratios. It can claim unprecedented care. It can claim every destroyed hospital was a military command post without ever having to produce verifiable, cross-examined evidence on tape. As Dave Smith pointed out at the end of that clip, this strategy might have worked 20 years ago in a world of centralized broadcast media. But in an era of high-definition video, direct social feeds from doctors on the ground, and real-time fact-checking, the public can see through the legal maneuvering. When state representatives are forced to claim on live international television that they don't count dead children, that they bar journalists to save them, and that 2 former Israeli prime ministers calling out war crimes are just sore individuals, the argument hasn't just collapsed. It has run completely out of excuses. If you believe that reporting requires real receipts, that facts matter more than access, and that human lives should never be reduced to fake statistical ratios, hit the subscribe button for the honest perspective. I'm Neil. Truth over access. People over profits. That's the honest perspective. And that's where I'll leave you.